Welcome everyone to the TruExact show. I got Brian here, I got Eric, and we have a special guest. We figured since Shark Week's coming up, we do our own Shark Week, and we were referenced to the shark expert. I'm going to say, and now if I say anything wrong, stop me in the middle of this. Shark expert, marine biologist, Dr. Catherine Macdonald, based in Miami, Florida. Catherine, how are you doing tonight?
I'm great. Thanks, you guys, for having me on.
No problem. We are really looking forward to this. It's a little bit outside of our comfort zone, like what we like to do. We're more of a hip-hop podcast, as I messaged you and said, but you were nice enough to come on, and we really appreciate it because everyone loves sharks. Everyone loves Shark Week. I think I'm watching some shark stuff right now upstairs. My dogs are watching it or whatever. So what we like to do first, how'd you get into this field? Introduce yourself. Tell the people about you.
I was one of those, dirty little kids who just liked to run around outside and get into everything. And if a raccoon got hit by a car, I was like, so if I brought this home, that would be cool. And my parents were like, it definitely would not. But that was me. So it was a pretty natural transition into filthy field scientist.
Nice. So how did the shark and aquatic marine life, how did that take over?
So when I was probably 7, I was visiting my great-grandparents in South Carolina, and somebody who was fishing from the beach where we were swimming caught a little bonnethead, probably 2 or 3 feet long, not very big. And everybody on the beach was in a complete uproar about the fact that this shark had been in there with their kids, and oh my God, what if somebody got hurt? And I walked over and I looked at this thing, and, they had it lying on the beach and its gills were flexing, and it was, clearly really in deep trouble. And I was like, of everything here, I don't think the kids are what's in danger.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty traumatizing, actually. So you saw danger in this fish, and you were one of the only ones on the beach who was like, I need to help this fish.
Yeah.
That's incredible. How do you go about going to school for that stuff? When you got into high school, did you go to high schools that had the courses for that, or not really?
No. A lot of times students will tell me that they think it's too late to work in marine science because they didn't take classes in high school that were relevant, or sometimes they didn't take classes in college that were relevant. But the truth is there's a lot of different paths to working with sharks, and there's a lot of different ways to work with sharks. So I have a PhD. I'm a scientist. I do field science, but I also teach at the University of Miami. So I spend a lot of my time writing papers, writing grants, analyzing data. But I work really closely with members of my team who are boat captains, who spend most of their time, making sure the engines are running smoothly, making sure we're good to go, and then they help handle sharks. So you don't have to be a super nerd to end up working with sharks. It does make some parts of it easier, but it's not a requirement.
My wife's going to kill you when I sign up for a marine biology course right after this podcast. She's going to be like, what did she say to you? All right, let's get into some shark talk here. Brian, I know you have a lot of questions, so I'm going to let you start this one off. So I know you're excited to talk about sharks. Let's do it, Brian. Go.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated with anything in the ocean, my entire life. I don't know why. It's just ocean life in general is very, it's almost alien to me because it's we're all on the same planet, but we're almost 2 different worlds completely, And I just have I've watched so many documentaries. I've watched so much National Geographic, Discovery Channel, all of them. But I guess one of the first things I want to ask you, and this is something I don't think that any program that I've watched has really covered, but do sharks have any form of communication with each other that's known?
Great question. So sharks in general don't really make sounds. Mm-hmm. So they don't communicate with each other audibly the way that a lot of terrestrial animals do. But we probably don't know all of the ways that they might communicate with each other using chemical signals. Mm-hmm. And we know that they can communicate with each other visually. So research into juvenile lemon sharks in the Bahamas has shown that juvenile lemon sharks have friends and enemies amongst other juvenile lemon sharks that remain stable over time. which tells us that they can remember their previous interactions and whether they like you or they don't like you. And they can individually tell each other apart, which isn't something that we knew about them before. Wow. So clearly they are communicating, even if it's just by choosing to spend time together or not, about what other juvenile sharks they like or don't like.
Now, with something like that, I mean, how do you go about researching that? Because would you dive with them and then kind of watch their patterns of how they swim? Like, I know that sharks have the electro sensors like in their snouts, and they use that to obviously track prey, and they can feel a fish in the water flapping on the top or in distress or anything like that. But do they use that to kind of sense each other as well? And then does it almost work like I almost feel stupid saying it like this. Does it work like almost a magnet in a way where like opposite ends, like polar ends of a magnet will push away from each other?
So physically it shouldn't, but they can definitely detect each other that way. So basically each of those they're called ampullae of Lorenzini, and they're tiny, very conductive gel-filled pores that allow sharks to pick up electromagnetic signals. And electromagnetic signals can be anything from the magnetic field of the earth, which you could theoretically use to navigate, to the electrical signal that tells your heart to beat. So they'll actually use it to find hidden or buried prey by its muscle contractions and heartbeat. But as far as I know, they don't use it on each other than to detect each other. Okay. Sharks and rays are quite closely related, but a lot of big sharks like to eat rays. And they'll use those ampullae to find rays that have buried themselves in the sand, trying to avoid that exact scenario.
Wow. Yeah, because I would say I would find it really interesting if they found a way to kind of reverse that process and use those electromagnetic waves to kind of shoot out to kind of interact with each other. But how would you even go about measuring something like that?
They have done studies that have shown that sharks can navigate mazes made with magnets. So they do respond to magnets being kind of placed in their environment. And there's been some research into whether you could use magnets as a protective barrier to protect beaches and swimmers.
Like the bottom of a surfboard?
I mean, it's one potential application, and there are products like the Shark Shield, which produce an electrical signal, which is intended to have, I think, a similar effect.
That's awesome.
I wouldn't advise, there are some places that market magnetic anklets and stuff with that idea in mind, but I've seen someone wearing one of them have their ankle nibbled by a shark, so I don't have high confidence in their effectiveness. Wow. You may unintentionally attract a shark rather than repel it.
I hope they kept the receipt for that. I need to return this.
That's terrifying, though. I was surfing once, and I was way out in the water, and I saw this truck come up across the beach, and this guy's yelling. He was a lifeguard, yelling at everybody, and everybody starts running off the beach. I couldn't hear anything. And then I swim in a little bit more, and I hear, shark in the water. And I've never swam so fast in my life. It also was like, I'm dead if he does anything to me. You know what I mean? Is there any suggestion if you're in that situation, what to do?
So first of all, it's very unlikely that you'll ever find yourself in that situation. I just want to emphasize that to your listeners. On the list of things that you encounter in your daily life that are more likely to be lethal to you, obviously cars, but also your toaster, your staircase.
Wow.
You're more likely to be killed by a vending machine.
Why?
You're more likely to have a coconut fall on your head and kill you.
Yeah.
All right. That's good.
So it's very unlikely.
Yeah.
That said, if you do find yourself in a bad situation, firstly, don't overreact. It's not that uncommon for a shark to approach a surfer or a swimmer to find out what they are without any problematic intent. So I've seen people have a shark get, within 5 feet of them and start trying to swing at it. Like, don't punch a shark that's not doing anything to you.
Yeah.
Once a part of your body is inside its mouth, though, the math on that changes.
Right.
Yeah.
And at that point, those ampullae around the snout are quite sensitive. The eyes are sensitive. The gills are sensitive.
So when one would see my defense, and I don't know if this would ever work, I used to always look at people further than me, and I figured a shark would eat them first. So I was good before them. That's how I based it. Now, they always say, though, 3 feet of water. Is that some myth or no? Are you safer in 3 feet of water or neck deep?
You're safer in shallower water, especially from larger sharks. They're not going to be eager to come into very shallow water. But the truth is that the majority of shark attacks, I mean, and I use the word attack quite loosely here. It's better to call them bites. The majority of them are people who go wading and step on a small shark, and it bites their foot.
Wow. And I saw you tweet that. I'm gonna paraphrase. I saw you tweet that, like, this notion that they're mean people eating machines that they're portrayed in movies and stuff. That's just not true. So, like, they're not out to get us, correct?
No, it's pretty rare, I would say, for people to get into the ocean without a shark or a ray knowing about it. Right? The ocean is full of sharks and rays, and they have incredible senses. If they were coming after us, you literally wouldn't be able to safely go for a swim. They're just not. Their priority, for the most part, is avoiding us.
Right.
Well, it's the same thing with aliens in movies. They're villainized. They're made to look like these monsters that are out to kill you and they're out to get you. Just because sharks swim around and they look scary. I mean, look, it's like anything else. They don't have hands. So the way they test things out is they take a bite.
That's exactly right.
Unfortunately, with something like a great white shark, if it's an 8 or 9 foot shark, if it takes a bite, it might take your arm. Right. But it's not necessarily out hunting you and trying to kill you.
Yeah.
The fact that anybody survives a bite from a great white tells you actually how uninterested in hurting a person they are, because it would be much easier with a great white's mouth to bite down and take a leg off than to bite down and let go before you take that leg off, and yet they still often do that.
Yeah. We've heard the whole thing, like they think we're seals or porpoises or whatever. Is that true? That's why they bite us, or they're just curious?
I don't think anybody can really answer that question, because nobody can, like, ask the shark what it thought. But certainly we do present that silhouette that can look somewhat seal-like. I would say the majority of shark bite incidents happen in situations where it's difficult for the shark to tell what you are. So that silhouetted seal surfer example is a common one, but also if you think about really murky water or right around dawn or dusk, when it's harder to look at you and ID you. Most coastal sharks have experience with people. People are everywhere. And so they see us and they're like, I know that's not a thing I want to deal with. That's not food. Let's move on. But mistakes do happen sometimes, but honestly quite rarely. In 2019, there were 64 unprovoked shark bites globally and 5 fatalities.
Wow.
Which on the grand scale of things, though, with the amount of people going to beaches, that's really not that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and which kind of leads into the next thing I wanted to ask. Now, I feel like there have been, I don't want to say this the wrong way, but I feel like there have been more and more reports of more sharks coming much closer to shore, especially ones that aren't necessarily always found closer to shore, like great whites, like makos, tigers, things like that. Are overfishing the oceans driving them more in towards the shores looking for food?
That is a great question.
2 in a row.
It may be a factor. I would say the increase we've seen in recent years in great whites along the New England coast probably has more to do with their population recovery and seal population recovery than anything else. As they're starting to recover based on their current protections, we're seeing more of them in habitats where they probably existed historically, but where we haven't really seen them for the last 70 years. For some species, we know that their ranges are shifting in response to climate change. So some species may be found further north than they have been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely prey availability is an important factor. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a shark moving from depleted habitat to habitat that contains more fish, whether that's closer to shore or farther away.
Yeah, and I was also going to ask, because you said of the climate changing, how much are the melting poles affecting like water currents and water temperatures that are also driving them in different areas that they're not necessarily found in?
We're really just starting to get a handle on those effects, and I think that the ways in which they will change the oceans are not yet fully predicted, and how sharks will respond to that. But I would expect to see changes in habitat. Dr. Chuck Bangley, who's a good friend, did some of his work on shifting bull shark nurseries in the Carolinas in response to climate change. Basically, nurseries for bull sharks are moving north a bit as water warms. So yeah, I do think we'll see changes in where sharks are found. In general, you can think of, very simply, you can think of colder water as more productive, containing more food, and warmer water as less productive, but also more comfortable for sharks, because most sharks are what's called ectothermic, which usually people think of that as cold-blooded. Their blood temperature is determined by water temperature. So they have limits for how cold they're willing to tolerate water being, but they also want to move towards that cold water because generally there's more food.
And that's all sharks are ecto like that?
Most sharks. There are a few cold water species, like great whites, that have a modified form of endothermy, which is warm-bloodedness, more or less like we have, where they recycle heat from their muscles back into their blood as they swim, allowing them to raise their body temperature so that they can survive in colder habitats.
It's really cool. As someone who has a father who literally has not stepped in the ocean since he saw Jaws in 1975, legit, that's a fact. What are the more, I know like they're not out to get us, but are there more dangerous ones to watch out for, like a tiger shark, a bull shark? Like, is there one that specifically is a little more aggressive?
So there are over 500 species of shark. Although most people, if you ask them, can really only name, great whites, tiger sharks, bull sharks, hammerheads. The average shark is about 2.5 or 3 feet long, right? They're most of them are just not very dangerous to humans. So the difference isn't really that the ones we think of as dangerous are more aggressive, so much as they're more likely to perceive us as a potential prey item, and they're more likely to do damage when and if they do make a mistake.
All right. That's well answered. All right, now I have my answer. Great.
There was a guy about a year ago that I met. He worked for National Geographic. He did the camera work, and he open water dove with great white sharks. And like, when he told me about it, I got in a long conversation with him. But when he told me about it, I was like, dude, I can't believe that. Like, you're insane. There's no way I could get in the water with a 12-foot great white shark. And he's like, well, believe it or not, and I want to know if this is true, but this is his experience. He's like, I've come across 15-footers, 16-footers, and free dive with them. And those ones are very calm, and most of the time you think they're going to be the ones like you'll be terrified of, they're going to eat you. And he's like, they're very calm. It's the juvenile ones that are 6, 7, 8 feet long. They're the ones that'll take a bite at you because they don't know what you are. The bigger ones kind of know what human beings are. They just stay away from them. They'll check you out. They'll swim by you, but that's really the most they're going to do.
That, I would say, broadly aligns with my experience working with sharks. In general, when I work with a little tiger shark or really any small species, they perceive us as a potential game ender for them, right? Like when they encounter us, they're like, that thing could kill me. This could be it. So I've got to get away. I've got to fight for my life. And when we catch and land a big tiger shark, 12, 13, 14 feet on our platform, that tiger shark is much more powerful, it puts a fraction of the effort into resisting us because it just doesn't see us as a threat. It's like, this is annoying.
Yeah. What was it like the first time you like saw the biggest shark you've ever seen up close? Like, what was that feeling like?
They are amazing. You have that wash of like adrenaline, right? And it never completely goes away. You get more used to it, and it reduces down, but I still have to sometimes like stop, take a breath, control for it. I mean, and it's like a positive excitement for me for the most part, but you still feel it. But they're actually, I find them incredibly peaceful, right? They're very efficient swimmers, and they just cruise. They're going about their business. They've been going about their business in more or less the same way for more than 400 million years.
Yep.
Now, one of the things we're taught, or I was, through movies and whatnot, are dolphins our friends or no? If there's dolphins, if there's dolphins around, am I safer with sharks, or that is a myth?
You are definitely in more danger from sharks, because sharks and dolphins eat a lot of the same fish. So if there are dolphins in the area because they're feeding, there are also sharks in the area who are feeding.
Wow, you guys have heard this, right? Like, I'm not crazy.
Okay.
You guys have heard that.
I've heard like a dolphin like try to fight a shark to defend humans, but I don't know. It's just dolphin propaganda. Who knows if that's
Well, that's good to know.
So people love dolphins in part, I think, because we see ourselves in them a little bit. You know, I mean, they're smart, they're social, they have these complex relationships. They look like they're smiling. Dolphins, a shark will kill a fish and eat it. A dolphin will torture a fish because it's bored.
Oh my God. I have a different outlook now. Dolphins are essentially more evil than sharks. That's
Definitely.
crazy.
Yeah, makes the football team look a lot more vicious than Miami Dolphins.
All right, that's good to know, because I was the one who, like, when I would see a dolphin, I'd be like, oh, I'm good, and maybe now I'll go into the ocean. Little did I know I was putting myself in a little more
You were in more danger.
Yeah, I was in more danger.
I was once running a shark tagging trip for a university that was part of like a larger field course, but it was just one day with me, and then they were going to do other things. I must have done 4 or 5 rounds with that university's lawyers and liability office on like the risks associated with going shark tagging, and they wanted every student to wear a life jacket the entire time, and they wanted, you know, none of them to like get closer than 5 feet to the shark and all this stuff. And I was like, I mean, I don't care, fine, but also they're going to miss out on a lot of stuff if they're standing 5 feet away in a huddle all wearing life jackets. And then the next day they went to a dolphin facility, and one of the students got bitten by a dolphin.
Oh my.
Jeez.
That's crazy. Now, why places like one of the hotbeds for sharks, like Australia, I hear a lot. Why places like that, or California? I know it might just be the weather or whatnot. So, yeah, around there. Why there? I mean, up here in Jersey, like, I don't know if you heard, we just, like, there was like a 400-pound great white found like yesterday, and some poor lady actually, it was crazy. Like, some people caught it or something. I
didn't catch it. They have a tag on it, and every time it pings, it shows where it is, how far off the coast.
All right, so yeah, there's one around here. So we don't get them a lot, even though I think the movie Jaws was based on New Jersey shark attacks, right?
There's a bull shark in the Manasquan River.
That's it, Brian. Good for you, man. See,
I know everything.
You should take a.
I picked the wrong career.
Your new apprentice. Right?
So why Australia as one of them, or California?
Coral reef,
So,
my guess.
If you think about those places, right, those are all places with pretty cold water, with traditionally decent-sized marine mammal populations, seals, sea lions, and with significant upwelling near shore, right, which basically just means that the ocean brings deep waters to the surface there. That's what makes for good wave breaks, right? But it also makes for incredibly productive ecosystems. So the same settings that surfers like for waves, great whites like for food.
Okay.
Which is part of the reason that you do sometimes see conflict between those two groups.
Right. That's cool. All right.
You know what? There was one thing I watched not too long ago. Have you ever seen the program they have on Netflix called Night on Earth?
Mm-mm.
Yes.
It's very interesting. They have one. There's two. Well, they do like different regions. They have one that's like in the jungles. They have other one forest, but then they have ocean. I think it was like top water and then deep ocean. But the top water one, they go to. I don't think it's Cape Town, South Africa. It's somewhere in South Africa, close to there. But what they've seen is instead of great whites hunting at like dusk where the sun is just going down, they hunt completely at night because the lights from the town that are there cast a shadow on the water, and the seals that think that they're safe now because of the darkness, they're not seen. They're actually seen by the great whites now. So they've adapted to use the light of the city in order to hunt the seals now.
That's aligned with shark strategies broadly. Sharks, many species have quite good vision relative to their prey. And so they do rely on that visual acuity to find and capture prey.
And that's, oh my God, that's one thing I want to see so bad in real life. I want to watch a great white come out of the water and just blast the seal in the air, come back down with it.
I mean,
when you see it, at least if you're me, there's not a lot of people who love sharks more than me, right? And I was still rooting for the seal. I was like, you can make it, buddy, go!
Yeah, no, I can't. Sorry. No, I agree. I couldn't watch it. I hate watching, like, I know it's nature and stuff, but I can't watch those, like, filmmakers just stand by and watch, like, the deer get killed by, or, like, the antelope get killed by the lion. It's horrifying to watch. I couldn't do it.
But what about when they're following polar bears that have no food left and they're literally watching them starve and they're like, well, I just got to watch this thing die now.
That's horrible too. Help them out.
Yeah.
Help the guy out. Yeah. Catherine, I have to ask you because you mentioned like you hated seeing that. Do you eat fish or no? Or you like stay away from all that since you're in marine biology? Is that a common thing? A lot of marine biologists, it's like I can't eat what I'm studying.
I think it varies a lot. I eat some fish, but not a lot of it. Mostly because I feel like I know too much. I'm like, we're friends. I can't go home and eat you.
Not food.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, and I do fisheries work in parts of the Southern Caribbean, and some of my research team was like, we gotta try this like nurse shark curry. It looks awesome. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I cannot go home and look a nurse shark in the eye if I eat this curry. I'm not doing it. But different people draw the lines in different places, and I don't think there's one right place. Everybody's got to decide. It's
like Lisa the vegetarian in The Simpsons. Not sure if you're familiar where she's going to eat the lamb and she sees the little lamb in her plate and she becomes a vegetarian. I always have to throw a Simpsons reference in. Sorry about that.
Seems right.
To get into a little darker spot with finning. Okay. I didn't know about this till like our one friend, his girlfriend in South Carolina is like a marine biologist. She's into all that stuff. I don't want to say she's a marine biologist, but she's into that type of field. Sorry, Haley, if I'm pronouncing your work or whatever. But she posted something with shark finning probably like 6 months ago. And I was like, this is horrible. I never knew about this. Brian, Eric, are you familiar with this?
Yep.
Finning?
They cut them spinning.
Yeah, Catherine, could you explain what it is, please, and how this came to be, how long this has been going on, and why there isn't as much attention drawn to this? I'm sorry if this is going to be tough for you to talk about, but it is horrible. Go on.
So shark finning is a fishing practice where they'll cut the fins off the shark and throw the body back into the water. Sometimes killing it, sometimes throwing it back in alive. But a shark without fins won't survive. So either way, it's bad news for the shark. Those fins usually are between 5 and 16% of a shark's total body weight. So obviously there's a lot of waste associated with that. In some places, fins might be collected as part of the trade in shark meat or other products, but there is a significant amount of fishing that goes on that's just intended to harvest fins. And the goal there is that they're very valuable. They sell for high prices. Unfortunately, especially in the US, people tend to be like, so the problem is China. Yeah. Because it's a cultural tradition there to eat shark fin soup. Historically, it was only like the imperial court that ate it, but in recent years, increasingly, it's something that people serve on special occasions, you know, big business events, big life events like weddings. There isn't, you know, what any of us think is or isn't okay comes from our cultural background.
Right.
So we tend to hear that some other cultures eat dog, and we're like, oh my God, that's awful. My dog is so sweet.
Yeah.
But any cognitive test shows that pigs are at least as smart as dogs. Mm-hmm. And this country's like, bring me some more ham and bacon. Right. I'm going to feed some of it to my dog, who's a part of my family. Yeah. This stuff is very subjective. So the problem isn't Chinese people or the things that their culture treats as food. The problem is a globalized fishery that isn't respecting sustainable limits on fishing, right? Mm. So from 2000 to I think 2011, the US was the 7th largest lander of sharks, right? We caught the 7th most sharks of any country in the world. And I think we exported the 13th most volume of shark products. So this is part of a much bigger system that we are a piece of. The problem isn't something that other people are doing somewhere else. The problem is a global problem that needs to be solved globally. I say all of this just because I know that this is one issue where people like to point the finger because they feel like they can be the good guy and somebody else can be the bad guy. But we're at a point in global conservation where humans are the bad guy. Mm-hmm. And it's up to us to work together to figure out how not to be.
Right. I can't even like sit here on my high horse and whatnot because I eat meat and all that stuff. But like, I guess when you hear about, I don't know, to me, there's something different about like some animal just getting its head chopped off rather than a shark getting its fin taken off, thrown back in the ocean, and it sinks for 3 hours and just sits there and drowns. Yeah, to me, that's like freaking horrifying. Like, how do you do that? Like, I don't know. It's like a dolphin. They're torturing the fish. Yeah. Like I'll never look at dolphins the same again.
Why don't they eat the rest of the shark? Is it just because they want that fin and they throw the shark back and it's just a waste of space on the boat or anything? And it's like, I guess it's a delicacy like rhino's horns. You see all the videos of them ripping their horns off. So is shark finning, is that illegal? Is it in certain countries?
Yeah. So the first thing you said, you're absolutely right. Some of it is space on the boat, right? Yeah. If you have a very low value shark body and high value fins and you have a small boat, chuck the body, save the fins. The other thing I'll add is that while I agree that the process of finning is really inhumane, as a shark biologist who works with sharks all the time, I would not find it physically easy to correctly locate the brain and rapidly kill a shark, right? They have very tough skin. They have pretty small brains for their skull size. They're not necessarily exactly where people would expect. And to get to it, you have to be up by the mouth. So if you're a fisherman, if your choices are between sort of putting yourself in danger for a prolonged sort of agonizing struggle with an animal or just chucking it back overboard, I understand why you would wind up coming down on the side of chucking it back overboard. It's not necessarily just that you don't care about the animal's well-being.
Right. I have to say, you're pretty like as someone who works in the field, I find you're very understanding about this stuff. It's like you're not trying to push the belief on. Like, you're just aware some people think different ways. So like, I wasn't expecting that, honestly. I was expecting a lot of people in your field to be like just very anti everything as far as fish eating or finning, but I don't want to say you condone it, but you're very understanding about it. That's really cool. I have to say.
A lot of fins come from really low income countries.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about, what would you be willing to do to feed your kids, to get them medical care, to make sure that they could go to school?
Okay.
We're quick to say like, oh, it's awful to clear the rainforest. But if the way that I got antibiotics that my family needed was by doing that, I would do it.
Right. So why aren't more people, the world's messed up. Why aren't more people like that? Like, that's a great way to look at it. Like, you're not judging someone for looking at something from a different side. You're just understanding about it, even if you don't agree. Good for you, Catherine. Very happy to have you. Uh-oh, here's the but.
That said, we do still need to find solutions that protect fishers' incomes, make sure that they aren't going hungry, and also ensure that we can have healthy shark populations into the future.
Right. Absolutely. And I always say you're going into their domain. Like, I get mad when, like, they all hunt the shark that might have bit someone out in the middle of the ocean. Like, that's the shark's habitat. So, like, if someone comes into your house, you're going to defend yourself to an extent. You know what I mean? So, I'm with you on that. Brian, any more questions? I know you had a lot.
Yes.
Okay.
How, and it probably varies by species, but how often throughout the year do sharks breed?
It varies considerably by species. So some sharks and rays carry a litter every year, occasionally even multiple litters in a year. Others reproduce every 3 years, every 4 years. Their reproductive strategies vary a lot. You can kind of think about it as you can have fewer pups and have a better chance of each individual pup surviving, or you can have more total pups with each individual being smaller and having a reduced chance of survival.
Yeah.
And so across those many species, sharks make a variety of different trade-offs on number of pups versus size and fitness of pups.
So I'm sorry, keep going.
I was just going to say the frilled shark, which is a deep sea shark, actually has the longest known gestation period of any vertebrate, which is being pregnant for 3.5 years.
Wow.
Wow, that's a long
That's
time.
a really long time.
That's awesome.
Now,
Deep sea sharks grow really slowly, right? Like very low resource availability in the deep ocean. So it takes time.
Wow.
Now, often is it smaller sharks will have more pups in a litter, and as opposed to larger sharks?
That's not too uncommon. And you can imagine exactly why, right? Smaller sharks are more likely to be prey.
Yeah.
And so, the trade-offs may be different. But even there are some small sharks that will give birth to only 2 young and make them as big as possible before they give birth. There are other sharks that will maximize for numbers and hope for the best.
Since they're so high on the food chain, what's the probability of a pup shark making it to adulthood?
So it probably varies by species, and we don't necessarily have the best numbers on this. But plenty of things are happy to eat juvenile sharks, including most bigger sharks. So mother sharks, when they give birth, actually release an appetite-suppressing hormone so that they won't be tempted by the offspring that they're giving birth to. So most sharks, after they're born, run off to spend some of their early lives in nursery habitat where big sharks are not present. Often that's like mangroves or shallow water, places where they're at less risk for getting eaten until they're bigger and more able to avoid being eaten.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, how long do they stay with the mother?
Most of them, no time at all. As soon as they're born, they're off and on their way, and they're really born complete, knowing how to be a shark.
Hold on. So this big shark carries around his or her offspring for 3 years, and that shark just leaves? I'd be pissed. I'd be like, what?
I'd say the same thing. I'd be like, get this thing out of me. I'm gone. Don't
Yeah, like, show some respect. Bring me back some food. I carried you around for 3 years, One thing I want to ask you, and I agree with you on this. You posted about Shark Week and the schedule. Okay. I'm with you on this. I don't want to blow your spot up here. This is all me talking. I don't need to see Will Smith diving. I don't need to see Mike Tyson running on the beach fighting a shark. I want to see educational shit. Sorry for my language. I want to see educational stuff. I want to hear about the stuff you're talking about. I want to see the people tagging the sharks, following him to his habitat. What are we doing? When did this become such a phenomenon that we need to see these celebrities dive with sharks? I don't give a shit. So, is that a common anger amongst you guys that it's becoming like this popular thing where it's watered down now with education?
Yeah. So I guess I'm grateful that people care about sharks, right? I mean, I know lots of people who study species that most people just aren't interested in, right? Mm-hmm. You study tiny marine polychaete worms. You try to get people excited about your research, and they're like, "Yeah, okay, mm-hmm." Right? But at any cocktail party, I'm like, "Oh, I'm a shark scientist," and people are like, "Let me talk to you." So I do appreciate the fact that there's this passion for them, and I think that has hurt sharks in some ways, right? Jaws drove a big push for fishermen to land great whites and kill them. But it also benefits them, right? We're talking about their conservation. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to sound ungrateful. That said, I think that people want to learn. I do think there's appetite for it, and they don't treat their audience like that's true. Right. Very little of this week's schedule looks meaningfully educational to me. So that's always a little bit disappointing. And I'm always also frustrated to see that they almost exclusively feature white male scientists when there are plenty of women and people of color working in shark science. And it gives a false impression of the field.
Yeah, I saw you tweet about that too. You don't think women are represented enough in the marine biology shows, and I mean, I wouldn't know that as much as you do, but I guess when I watch, I'll keep an eye out now. But when I do watch, I guess I rarely see female divers. Is maybe they just I don't know why they do that. I couldn't answer that. It's stupid. If women are a part of marine biology too, you should be featured as much. So, I'd be frustrated too if I was you. You guys work your ass off. This isn't an easy field. I mean, this is shit I wouldn't even think of doing. I wouldn't even, I don't even get in my, I used to not get in my pool when I saw a spider floating around. I'd have my brother come out and skim it and be like, I'm not getting in today. Tomorrow's a new day. So I can't imagine getting in an ocean with a shark. So you guys definitely need the recognition you deserve.
How do people get approached? Do they get approached by the network? How are people featured on it? Who decides who, what would put you on their radar compared to anybody else?
So mostly production companies come up with a pitch for a show and then take it to Discovery. Okay. So a little bit the problem is that, each of those companies has scientists they've worked with in the past, and those are going to be the first person that they think of when they're thinking about a new show. And part of the problem is that those shows overwhelmingly feature the same species over and over again. But you can imagine that the amount of money you need to have as a scientist to study great whites is a lot more than the amount that a scientist needs to study black tips close to shore, which are one of the species that I work with. So it favors scientists who are a bit more established, who have more money, and that tends to be white men.
Right. Now, when obviously we were referenced to by Dr. Schiffman, so is he one of the? I'm happy you referenced you. Have you guys worked together? How did you guys come in contact?
We did our PhDs together. We were in the same incoming class of PhD students at the University of Miami in 2011.
Oh, wow. All right, cool. The U. The Miami's the U, right? That's
Yeah.
the U. All right, the U. All right, I have to ask this because my wife will come if I don't. This is her question. How do you feel about cage divers who do it? Not cage divers, like you go to the Bahamas and it's like a spectacle. You go in a cage and like it could draw sharks closer and they're kind of looked at as a zoo animal, if you will. How do you feel about that? Are you against that, or it doesn't really matter?
I'm like the annoying person who's always like, well, it's complicated, but it's complicated.
All right.
I think that, on the one hand, shark tourism can be a sustainable way for sharks to generate revenue for coastal communities. And there are places where that's working. But I also think it has its own set of impacts, both on sharks, because normally they're feeding them to bring them in. And so if you're feeding them, is that appropriate food? Is it nutritionally valuable? Are they still going to be hunting if you're feeding them? Are you affecting how they sort of perform their ecological function? But also if you're drawing them in, are you concentrating them? And as we've all had to unfortunately learn from COVID, if nothing else, when you gather a bunch of people together, they're more likely to trade germs. When you gather a bunch of sharks together, they're more likely to exchange parasites and other pathogens. So, there are costs to sharks associated with being part of that, including, if you condition them to come to a boat, they're at much greater risk of being fished out.
Okay.
They're also then at risk of getting hit with the propeller of the boat. And I've seen sharks with injuries consistent with a propeller strike. So there's good things and bad things about it. If it presents them in this bloodthirsty way. So a long time ago, before I went back to grad school, I went out cage diving in South Africa as part of a fellowship that I was working on. And the mate on the boat, as we were driving out to the site, was like, don't stick your hand out of the cage because they'll bite it off like that.
Okay.
And I was like, that's bullshit. Like, you don't want to have the argument with me about whether I'm allowed to or not, right?
Right.
Like, because the truth is, like, you're not allowed to put your hand out of the cage. If you do, I'm going to pull you out of the water and you're not going to be allowed to get back in.
Right.
Like, that was the rule as he should have communicated it. But he didn't want to have to deal with people being like, well, but like, what if I just put it out a little? Yeah. So instead, he says that the shark's going to take your hand off. And I'm like, you're giving all of these people a really false impression of what's happening here.
Right.
And like, so many shark tourism operators argue that they have a conservation benefit because they change people's minds about sharks, but not if they're using that kind of messaging.
Right.
It's just lazy because you don't want to take the time to show them and talk to them. You're just saying, yeah.
Just to backtrack a bit about the shows on and there's not enough women. It kind of like would piss me off because I feel like for them to put on a women-based show, you'd have to have like women in the title. You got what I'm saying? It'd be like women in the water with sharks or something. And then they'd be like, this'll sell. Yeah. When it shouldn't have to be like that. It should just be Shark Week with marine biologist Catherine Macdonald. But if it had like some salacious title, they'd be like, let's
Lady Sharks. Yeah.
And you know that if a dude expert is on there, he just gets to be an expert. But if I'm on there, there's going to be commentary about what I look like and how I talk and whether I'm as smart as other people who are on there and whatever else because I'm a woman.
Yeah. I saw you post that too. I saw you tweet. I've been stalking your Twitter lately. Sorry about that.
You are more than welcome on my Twitter.
I saw you tweet that too. You were like, it was good. You like threw a shot at people. You were like, by the way, guys, anyone watching Shark Week? Once again, paraphrasing. Anyone watching Shark Week? We don't need to hear about females' looks during the damn show. Like I
have a friend who was featured a few years ago, and literally the little chyron at the bottom of the screen that has people's tweet reactions to the show, they literally ran stuff about her appearance.
Wow.
At the bottom of the screen while she's talking as an expert, and you're just like,
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to ask you what it said. Maybe when we stop recording. But yeah,
it was PG. It was PG.
Yeah, but like that shouldn't be what's on there. It shouldn't matter.
It shows how stupid people are, right? She's like, okay, well they're from birth to this, they're doing this, and just she's so hot.
It's so dumb. I'd hate to laugh. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, it is just people are out of the ordinary. I'm good with my questions. Bri, do you have any more?
No, that's all I got.
I have questions about the general ocean. The Great Barrier Reef, is that a big issue? And do you study that at all and the health of it? No.
No, I mean, no. I can say a few things about it. I'm not so ignorant that I can't answer that question as a marine scientist, but I'm not an expert either on corals or Australia. But the short answer is that reefs all over the world are in really deep trouble. And that is partly because we're dumping fertilizers and pollutants into the water that give algae an advantage over corals, right? If you give reefs more nutrients, algae can grow faster and outcompete corals. It's partly because we're warming the oceans and corals are not adapted to survive at the temperatures that we're reaching now. So if you've heard of coral bleaching, corals rely on algae to produce a lot of the energy that they use to build their own skeletons and meet their own metabolic needs. And they have these tiny algae inside their own tissues. They're called zooxanthellae. And when it gets too hot, the photosynthesis within those zooxanthellae starts to break down, and that symbiotic relationship breaks down, and those dead or dying zooxanthellae are released into the water. And those are what give coral their colors, so then they look bleached. Okay. And without those zooxanthellae, they start to starve and die. They can bleach for a while, and if the water cools back down and they're able to take on new symbionts, new algae into their tissue, they can survive bleaching, although it's still costly. It's like being very sick for a while. You know, you might survive it, but you still lost a bunch of weight and lost a bunch of muscle tone, and it takes time for you to get back to full health. But they're bleaching now over and over again. On some reefs, they're bleaching every year. And so they can't recover fast enough, really, to hang on. So they're suddenly having more competition from algae. Their own health is taking this really severe hit from warming, and they're having more difficulty calcifying their skeleton because of ocean acidification, right? The compounds that they need to build that skeleton are less available to them. And across those three things, we're seeing massive declines. Plus, here in Florida, we've had huge disease outbreaks among corals. Again, mostly associated with warmer weather. Some of those diseases associated with human sewage being released onto reefs. On the Great Barrier Reef, they've had big problems with outbreaks of coral predators, like the crown of thorns starfish, that munch their way across reefs. So increasingly, our reefs just aren't healthy or resilient enough to survive what we're throwing at them.
For a non-expert, that was a hell of an answer.
I literally, towards the end, I started to smile. I was like, wow, she doesn't know. Oh, wow, not an expert. And then my other question was the Pacific plastic patch. I forget the great patch. I forget the term.
The triple P, right? The triple P.
Triple P, as we call it out in the street.
Yeah.
How bad is that? Because, I mean, I've seen like these documentaries where it's not just that it's a giant patch of plastic, but it's eventually broken down, and then the animals are eating that. One of my favorite sea animal is sea turtles. And when I was in Hawaii, I was swimming around, and it took everything in me not to touch them. You're not allowed to because we have germs and stuff, but they're awesome. You see them, they're all messed up. They got a straw on their nose. Like, it makes you really rethink plastic. And I saw some guy throw a plastic cup out of his car on the driveway, like on the highway the other day, and I wanted to follow him and tell him to pick it up because, you know, it's not cool. But do you study any of that, or you're not an expert, but you're probably going to school us again for a little bit?
I'm not an expert, but I can say some things about it.
Okay.
So the biggest problem with plastics, honestly, is that we don't totally know what all of its effects will be. So plastics that get dropped into the ocean, get broken down into very, very small pieces, but that doesn't mean that they've disappeared. And if you think about the marine food web, the bottom of that food web is plankton, right? And zooplankton. So plankton are tiny plants. Zooplankton are tiny animals that eat those tiny plants. A lot of important species that we care about, like whale sharks and basking sharks, filter feed out large volumes of those plants and animals to meet their metabolic needs. So suddenly those plants and animals are also full of tiny little pieces of plastic. And we've seen that those bits of plastic are bioaccumulating up the food chain. So you find pieces of plastic now incorporated into the muscle tissue of swordfish and sharks and tuna.
Yeah.
Often below the level where, the human eye could see it.
Yeah.
And we're starting to find those in human bodies too, right? So it's not clear, really, how bad that is for us or for them.
Right.
But we're conducting a really giant experiment that we don't know the outcome of, and assuming that it'll be okay.
Yeah.
Another great answer by a non-expert. 3 things I took from this really quick. I didn't pay any attention in biology. I wish I had. You said a bunch of words I can't spell. And is there seaweed in ice cream?
In some ice cream, yes.
Okay, I always thought so. People thought I was crazy. I just wanted verification on that.
All of the things we went over, and those are the 3 things you took away.
No, I took away a lot more, but those are the 3 I was like, I have to ask if there's seaweed in ice cream. Catherine, all right, we do a final segment on this show. It's called the Gun to Your Head segment. It's kind of a this or that or a would you rather, right? We keep score, okay? So we have a tally here going on. I'm in the lead with 5 wins. Eric on your left bottom here. Wave, Eric. There he is. He's got 4. He's about to 3-peat unless you say differently. Brian up here also has 4 wins, who's been slacking lately. Now, what we do is we ask you 5 questions each, and you give answers, and then at the end you have to pick a winner who you thought asked the funniest or best question, okay? Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. I came in 3rd place last time, so I will go first. All right. Would you rather watch Deep Blue Sea or listen to Baby Shark?
Ooh.
Yep.
Do I have to listen to Baby Shark for the entire duration
Yes.
of Deep Blue Sea?
Yes, it's that. Yeah, the length of Deep Blue Sea.
She's such a scientist. Just thinking about it.
This is complicated.
I'm going to go with Deep Blue Sea, but I'm not going to be happy about it.
You don't think that when the guy did the front flip over the shark, that was real? Like when the shark was about to attack him, he did a front flip?
I haven't seen it.
Oh, God, it's the worst movie of all time. Please watch it. All right. Would you rather watch the Jersey Shore or just spend a day at the Jersey Shore?
Easy. Let's go to the beach.
Okay. We're pretty polluted up here. All right. Miami Dolphins or Miami Marlins?
Animals or sports ball teams?
Sports teams.
Marlin.
Okay, that's fine. Would you rather swim with a school of clownfish or fish with a clown?
Is he the bait or my fishing partner?
Your fishing party. Why would you?
With his big nose, just throw him over the boat.
I mean, it wouldn't have changed my answer. I would rather swim with clownfish.
All right, last one from me. As far as shark puns, would you rather say any fin goes or that's jaws dropping?
Oh,
So terrible.
I'm going with any fin goes.
Okay. I think
You
I
have
did.
to say that. You have to use that if you ever get on Shark Week.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, you want to go? Anything goes, guys.
All right, Brian, you're up.
All right, first one. Would you rather fight an octopus or go 1 round in the UFC octagon?
Fight an octopus. I've had to do that before.
Really?
Really?
We hooked one on our shark lines once, And it was very weird to try to unhook something that was trying to grab you back.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
They're
That's so
smart
crazy.
too. They're very smart.
Wow. All right, second one. Would you rather be swallowed by a whale or swallow a snail?
Guess swallow a snail? I feel bad.
Escargot,
Is the
right?
shell
Is that
on?
escargot?
Yeah.
Yeah. Brian with the rhyme game there. Go on.
Would you rather sell hermit crabs or be a crabby hermit?
Definitely the second one.
What's better, electric eels or Elio's pizza?
Oof.
I mean, I've got to go with the eels.
Yeah,
I mean,
all right.
we're not talking about to eat, right? We're just like
No. I'm just in general.
eels.
Yeah,
Eels are
easy.
awesome.
Easy, Brian. Like easy.
They have a second set of jaws inside their first set of jaws.
Yeah, they are amazing.
I did not
The
know
fact
that.
that they produce an electric current like that. All right, last one. Who would you rather meet? A seagull named Steven or Steven Seagal?
I guess Steven Seagal, because I bet he could convince a bunch of people to care about sharks who wouldn't listen to me.
He might.
Hey, don't sell yourself short, Catherine. All right, Eric, you're up. Repeat here, no pressure.
I'm nervous. Okay. Would you rather be a hermit crab or a loner lobster?
A lobster.
Lobster? Okay. Great start. Would you rather be caught in a Sharknado or a humpback hurricane?
A Sharknado, I think. It's more localized. The danger is lower.
Okay, that makes
He analyzes all these.
I know. Would you rather be on the show Shark Tank or stuck in a tank with a shark?
Definitely the second.
Okay.
Really?
If you were trapped with one, would you rather be with a polar bear or a bipolar shark?
The shark, 100%. Polar bears hunt people. Sharks don't.
Okay. And what's more dangerous, rising tides or tide pods?
Definitely sea level rise.
Okay.
All right.
But don't eat Tide Pods.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Okay.
All right, Catherine, you got to pick a winner. What question stuck out? What was your favorite one?
Oh,
Not me.
I think yours made us laugh the hardest as a group.
It's you got.
But I hate contributing to you pulling further ahead.
Well, no. You have to go with your heart here.
Yeah.
All right, you're gonna take it, and then
that's a clear
Sorry,
victory.
guys.
I'm sorry. That was a clear victory, by the way. You want to talk about a trouncing? That was a trouncing. That was a body bag. That was a 3-0. That was just a beat down on Brian and Eric. Sorry, I was going to call you Dr. Catherine Macdonald. Thanks for coming out. Where could we catch you on Twitter, Instagram, plugging stuff you're going to be on, or where we can see your stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. On Twitter, you can find me at Dr._Catmac, CATMAC. On Instagram, the same, but without the space in between, so just Dr. Catmac.
Right.
And my website is drcatherinemacdonald.com. So if you are a marine scientist in your heart, you can reach out to me and I can give you some advice towards becoming a marine scientist in places other than your heart.
Once again, this was real awesome. This was so cool that you came on. I really appreciate it. If we ever have any shark questions again, would you be willing to come on again? Yes.
100%.
Right. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. It's been so much fun.